The Strange Abduction of Freddy Heddy Hardcrumble, Part 1. Freddy Heddy Hardcrumble. Written by Laurie Ann Pokin. Narrated by Graham Mack. For Bindi. Prologue. The only food he had in the place for her was made of plastic. Bumpy brown plastic burger patties, green rubber lettuce, bright yellow floppy cheese squares, triangle slices of plastic pizza. Those fit into a grey bendy dish, like a puzzle. And the icebox and cabinets were full of the stuff, too. The place was made up of just 2 rooms. The kitchen and living room were one, and the doorless bedroom, which had a seatless toilet in the corner, was the other. After the second day, or maybe it was the third, for there was no way to really keep track of time, except somewhat by how her tight curls began to fall and her nail polish grew out. Freddy Heddy Hardcrumble got so hungry, she started to wonder if maybe the plastic was just a wrapper. That maybe there really was beef inside the brown plastic burger patties and cheese and dough within the triangle slices of plastic pizza. There was a whole shelf of colorful cereal boxes in the cupboard. And when she grabbed the first one, it had some weight to it, and rattled when she shook it. As careful as could be, she pulled open the cardboard tab and gently unrolled the cellophane bag within, her mouth already watering. But it was full of Legos. She did her best to roll the cellophane back down, close the lid, and return it to the shelf, just the way she'd found it. She moved on to the next box, handling it slow and careful as she had the first. But it turned out to be full of puzzle pieces, and that made her think of Paul. Paul liked his puzzles. No, Paul loved his puzzles. But was that the truth of it? Maybe it was that he liked being at home, and puzzles just gave him something to do. A reason. No, an excuse to be home. He wasn't yet 40, but lived like an old-timer. So when he asked her if she wanted to have a drink last week, in a roundabout but polite as can be sort of way, she told him no. Even though he'd been fixing the same food at the same place for nigh on 15 years, he never took shortcuts. He prepared each plate as if it was for his own mama. Bowling alley or not, his was the best in town. Freddy'd even told him so. But it made her wonder, and she wasn't one to often wonder, why he was still at the bowling alley. When he asked if he could cook her dinner some night at his place, she also told him no. The funny thing was, he'd done it anyway, cooked for her. He brought it in the next day, and it wasn't some fried bowling alley food. He'd fixed thinly sliced prime rib roast with garlic and chive mashed sweet potatoes, peppers and red onions sautéed in olive oil, roasted asparagus topped with melted parmesan and salt, and homemade cornbread with brown gravy. And there was even a napkin and a fine thermos of sweet tea. All that after she told him no, and no again. Why was she thinking about Paul the cook anyways? It couldn't be Paul. No, it must be the food. Paul's food. But what she saw in her mind was not just his food, but his hands preparing it. Paul's hands. She moved on to the next cereal box and found that, like the first two, it was not filled with cereal. It was filled with the torn-up cardboard of another cereal box, as if the cereal had gotten so hungry it had eaten its own. There were plastic waffles and egg cartons full of empty Easter eggs in the icebox, and even the window was fake, just drawn on. She ran her finger over the blue sky, and it pilled under her long painted nail, waxy like crayon. The little waxy balls gave her something soft to chew, and there was a faint taste of barbecue sauce. But she worried the scrapes would be noticed, so did her best to stop. The bowl on the living room table was full of dust-coated fake fruit, and the TV stared at her, blank and grey and stagnant, like everything else. There was a shelf of records, but no record player. The floor lamps had no light bulbs, and she found no outlets. There were fluorescent lights in the ceiling, and they were always on, and she could find no switch to make them stop. It was like being trapped in a model home, but it didn't have that model home smell. She was 5'6", 7 with her work shoes on, and the ceiling was low, like a basement. So when she stood on tiptoe and reached, she could graze the ceiling panels with the tips of her fingers. But it didn't smell like a basement. In fact, the only thing she could smell was herself. The perfume she'd dabbed on her wrists, neck, and behind her ears 3, or had it been 4, days ago, was still there. But it was made stale by her sweat and unbrushed teeth. The only thing that worked, aside from the icebox and ceiling lights, was the toilet with its pull chain, and since nothing came out of the kitchen sink, and the milk carton in the refrigerator was just like the food, Freddy had only one way to quench her thirst. She still wore her uniform, a pink short-sleeved dress, nude pantyhose, white non-slip kitty heels, and a pastel blue apron with the words "Little Bert's Lanes and Games" at the top, and a cartoon picture of a black bowling ball with only legs, chasing 2 white pins with only arms, and "I got your 6" at the bottom. And she wore this as she lay on the hard, twin mattress on the bedroom floor beside the seatless toilet, comforted in only a thin sheet and flat, stained pillow. Her feet throbbed as she stared up at the low fluorescent ceiling. They felt fat and wet. Maybe they were bleeding, or maybe it was just sweat. She looked down. Her legs were unblemished and firm, but stubbly, and her feet, they looked like little kid feet, chubby, the swollen, taut skin pushing against the strap restraints of the white shoes. But still she kept them on. Except to use the toilet, she never took anything off. At home, in her big waterbed, she'd sleep in just breeches and an oversized T-shirt, wrapped within a tangle of sheets and quilts, and encased by an abundance of mismatched pillows. But as she lay on the small, hard mattress, the stinking flat pillow, and the thin sheet, she tried to remember the in-between, the missing time, from after she left work and before waking up in this place. She pulled her blue apron up over her face and breathed in the lingering smell of fatback and maple syrup. She closed her eyes and thought about 3 days ago. Or had it been 4?